You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I'm joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how we doing?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. I was signing in, getting ready for the show, and I know it was only a week, but I sat down and I was like, man, it feels like it has been forever since I've done this show from my wife's office, truthfully. Not my office, but from this spot instead of a stinking hotel room. Like, I don't know why it felt that way tonight, but it did. So I'm glad to be home. Like, I am glad to be home. Been watching a lot of college basketball as it's getting ready for conference tournaments and everything. So that's kind of been filling my sports quota here, and a little bit of XFL. Caught a little bit again this past weekend, but overall, doing all right, guys.
I failed because I said I was going to make an effort to watch more XFL last episode, and I did not make an effort to watch more XFL. I'll tell you what I did do on Sunday. My fiance and I, we had a lovely Sunday. We got some brunch. We went to a bridal show where we thought we were like, hey, let's go. We have, our wedding's coming up. We have all of our stuff. But we were like, maybe they'll have like a honeymoon giveaway. So like, we'll throw our name in the hat for some giveaways. They did not have a honeymoon giveaway, so kind of a waste of time. But there was free alcohol, so there's that. But we got back.
Kudos to you.
Yes.
Before going to one, because I don't know about you, Derek, but I can tell you, I sure as heck never went to one. That's,
yeah.
My wife and I lovingly, have jobs, right? And that's the wife's job, and that's the man's job, whatever.
Sure.
It's all lovingly, but that stuff right there is woman's work. Like, God bless them. But the wedding planning
work,
we just supposed to show up. Like,
right,
just don't stand her up at the altar, and it's good. Just make sure she's happy.
And I'm not gonna make this out like I've been like crazy. She has done so much stuff for it, and she is a rock star. And I'm very excited to marry her and to see the party that she has put on. But when I got back on Sunday, we had some time to kill. We were both a little tired from the excitement of brunch and free booze at this wedding show. And so I was like, I'll throw on a NASCAR race. Like, I'll find a NASCAR race. And then I was like, maybe I don't want to watch the NASCAR race. Like, I'm not really in NASCAR race mode. I tried to catch some of the 500. It was an exciting one, right? Like, there was that. But instead, what I did was put on the Drive to Survive, which is the F1 show. I haven't watched it before. So I put that on and got real wrapped up in that and finished that on Monday as my other day off. So I finished that on Monday. And then I was like, I should probably watch that Full Swing that Netflix has. It's by the same dudes. And I watched that, and I'm damn near through that. I needed to do a lot of stuff on Monday. I did very little of it because I was so caught up in the Full Swing. If you haven't watched it, it's really good. It's the best way that I can say it is it's redundant to a point where it doesn't really help if you binge it, because you don't really need to stick around. Each episode is kind of self-contained, and they do a good job of recapping anything that you may have missed from previous episodes. But that was fun. So I am like really into I'm ready for the golf season to kick off. I'm ready for F1 season, which does begin I think this week, if I'm not mistaken. And as always, college basketball, I've been keeping my eye on that because tournament time is right around the corner.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyways, all that to say, I didn't watch any XFL this weekend. I did not live up to my word.
You know, the entire time that you were going through that, you started describing your nice little Sunday, right? Like, do you guys remember that movie from that movie Old School, and that scene where Frank the Tank is at that college party and he's describing what he and his new bride have ready to go for the next
might
one?
hit up Bed Bath and Beyond. I don't
Yeah,
know. We'll see
I
how
don't know.
crazy the day gets.
You know, we had a pretty nice little Sunday planned. You know, actually, we're gonna do a brunch, and then we're gonna head to Home Depot, and maybe get some Bed Bath and Beyond. Who knows? Who knows if we'll even have time? Like that scene kept playing through my
Yeah,
so I was a little checked out on that one.
That's fair.
I was watching that movie play back in my head there.
3 takeaways that you should take from that. 1, watch the Drive to Survive on Netflix. It's very entertaining. 2, watch Full Swing on Netflix. As golf fans, which I know we all are, it's a good one, especially because they kind of document the whole live PGA drama split. They had a front row seat to that, so that was thoroughly entertaining. And then 3, I didn't watch any XFL this weekend. Those are the 3 takeaways from my long ass story.
Fair enough.
There's your cliff notes.
By the way, we talked baseball last episode there, right? Like we're kind of now full encompassing the entire sport in world here. But here's another hot take for you, right? I gave my baseball hot take. Here's another hot take for you. Golf is better to watch on TV than baseball.
Oh, I'm not so certain anymore because of the pitch clock. So I do think that baseball is going to be more palatable on television because of the pitch clock.
Now, did you guys see that the way that Braves game ended?
Yeah.
Or I should say, went to extras, right? Like bottom of the ninth, tie game, bases were loaded, and I don't even know who was at bat, but he got strike 3 called on him because it was the batter wasted time. So they called a strike on him.
Because he wasn't in the box when he needed to be.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
There's going to be so much of that this spring. Hopefully they get all the bugs ironed out before they depart for their.
Well, I hope not. I want to see regular baseball in chaos. Like it's so freaking boring. Like the most exciting thing you get out of it is, some, PED controversy. Like, bring on the chaos.
Hey, but even then, right? Like you think about it historically, like there was a very big time they embraced PEDs in the game, like celebrated it almost to the point to then after the fact go, oh no, that was bad. You shouldn't have done that. Here's our finger wave. You don't get into the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah, shenanigans. Right. Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. I am not a seam head by any stretch of the imagination, but I have watched enough baseball that I don't give a leap that McGuire and Clemens and Sosa and Bonds should all have their own wing. Like it should be its own area of the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Because they are famous for what they did for baseball in that time frame and really brought it back because it was on life support, much like I think it's going on here now. Like it's just the TV money is the only thing propping it up, but I can't imagine that the revenue that these channels and programming services are paying for this are worth it for them. Like it has to be a lost leader for them.
Oh yeah.
It's just TNT saying, yeah, we have baseball.
Think about all the RSNs right now, all those regional sports networks that are going through sale after sale. I mean, every time you guys flip on, it's, what are we calling the sports network? What are the games on now? Like what are they on now? What's the network called? And that's because those RSNs have just been going after, Fox Sports didn't want them. They were money pits. And so, Bally, which was Sinclair Broadcast Group, bought all those. And now Sinclair's trying to sell off all those. It's going to go to a streaming service. Like that's where it's headed, right? It will be a streaming service. You will have to pay to watch. It'll be like pay-per-view, which I think is kind of the way of the future for live sports because they are money pits. It's a huge cost and at little return. Unless you're in a major market or a market that deals with it. And you guys, I mean, in Colorado, you guys are dealing with, billionaires arguing with billionaires right now where you guys can't watch the Nuggets or the Avalanche because they're on an RSN, right, owned by the owner of those teams. Right.
Well, that's the same thing
with Dish or with Comcast, right? It's Comcast, which is the largest cable provider in the state. Right. So you can't watch the Avs or the Nuggets in Colorado right now if you have Comcast.
Right. And that's been going on for a long time too.
Years. Yeah.
Yeah. And really they started Altitude in a similar model with what the Yankees did with the Yes Network.
Yes Network, yeah.
That's what a lot of baseball teams went and did anyway, was created their own network so that they could generate the revenue within themselves. So then,
the Cubs have their own network now,
right?
The Dodgers have their own network. Like,
I'm pretty sure Boston does as well. Like, you look at the major markets and the major teams out there, the teams that spend all the money to try and go out and win world championships have a network associated with it to help them, be able to bankroll those ridiculous payrolls.
It's going to be, that'll be the way of the future. If the team doesn't have their own, their own channel, it'll be a pay-per-view. It'll be a subscription service like Netflix or Hulu or whatever. You're going to have to pay X amount of dollars in order to watch it. That's just, there's too many games.
Where I will end.
Right.
Like,
It's going to turn off a lot of people.
54 games. I figured this out. 54 games. You know why? Because when do most people start watching baseball? Realistically, when do most people start watching baseball?
Oh, after the All-Star break. Yeah.
August.
4th of July. After the All-Star break in the middle of July.
I would say it's even later than that. I would say they start tuning in about August.
I'll see in August I'm tuning into
that's football.
And mini
you've got a little sweet
else.
spot.
Like, you have me from
May, June, July.
If the Rockies are in contention, a lot of times they're out by June, so I don't pay attention to that.
Right.
And then July, because there's nothing on in July. Because in June, you at least have the NBA finals, the NHL finals. Like, you have stuff that kind of gets you through the midway point. And then it's that middle of June through the end of July. It's that 6-week period where sports just suck, right? There is nothing on TV besides baseball. And it is their chance to dominate. And there's the problem, ESPN, the 4-letter network only plays 4 teams, 5. You have the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Cardinals, the Dodgers, and then some random affiliate that's good that year. Like, that's what it is. Other than that, the Cubs. There you go. There's the O.
Yeah, you get the Cubs.
Those 5 teams and whoever they might be playing. But, I mean, when's the last time, any team that you guys cared about was on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN? Like, it's all East Coast hogwash crap.
Again, 54 games started in June. It ends July. They play the playoffs in August, and they're wrapping up right as football season kicks off, and that's how you fix it. 54 games, run it June through July, regular season. We'll call it a day.
Hey, speaking of rule changes, I don't know if you guys saw this today. There was a report on the 4-letter network about rule changes that college football and the NCAA are looking at making as they get ready for the 12-team playoff. Did you guys happen to see this?
Did not
see that one, the games up? Is that what you're talking about?
They want to speed the games up. Yep. It's in an effort to speed the game up. And they're doing it under the guise of player safety, right? Reducing the number of plays during the game. And it could happen, I guess, as soon as this season, according to this report. But there's 3 things. I guess 4 things that they. No, 3. Sorry, 3. 3 things that they are considering. And one of them is running the clock after a first down is awarded, except in the last 2 minutes of either half. Eliminating the option for teams to call consecutive team timeouts and carrying over any fouls to the next period instead of finishing with an untimed down. Now, I don't know that the third one is necessarily going to speed up the game all that much.
No.
Because it's such a rare occurrence, right?
Yeah.
But it's the speed of college football
isn't a problem.
I think they're looking at the wrong time. College football is entertaining. Like, the entire thing is entertaining. If they want to limit the amount of snaps, the only thing that does that is the running
of the clock after first downs. Yes, I agree.
It's the consecutive timeouts, who cares?
Right.
Yeah. Like, how often does that happen, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly. And it doesn't save the players from an extra play. Like, it's just prolonging the play because the clock is stopped.
Right.
Like, it does absolutely nothing. Same thing with the untimed down or carrying it over. Who cares? You're talking about 15 seconds. It's not even that. By the time you get over into the next period, so it's the untimed down, it's 8 seconds. It's one play and 8 seconds at most.
And realistically, too, when you look at it, most games, right, like college football doesn't have the parity that the NFL does, right? Like, This isn't one of those that the NFL, there's a ton of these things that you can even have bad teams, and it comes down to a one score game type of thing consistently, right? And you see those week in, week out type of deal where the Vegas even goes through and sets the odds consistently at 2.5, 3.5 points per game is the spread on these things. College football, you can routinely see 14, 20 point spreads on these things, and teams will routinely cover those kind of spreads out there as well. So this isn't one of those that that it's going to ultimately be like, oh, you're speeding the thing up, because there's so many of these college football games that are over by the third quarter that the fourth quarter is just a complete running clock in most cases. So some of that doesn't make much sense to me.
I like the idea of not stopping the clock after a first down, except in the final 2 minutes, right? Like that does make sense. It makes it exciting. It doesn't force you to burn a timeout if a college kid makes a boneheaded play, right, and stays in bounds. Like you don't have to drastically change the game. So I do like that idea.
And for the most part too, how many of these teams anymore do we see the what Chip Kelly kind of brought to that game in Oregon back in the day, where it's this constant high tempo, up tempo, constantly trying to put on that, where we see these play clocks don't even get down to 40 seconds in a lot of, the full play clock. We see a lot of these things where, the play clock is half over when the snap happens, and it's all about trying to get a multitude of plays in there. So I don't, there's not much that they've got to do to ultimately try and speed that game up.
So the NCAA football secretary, rules editor, and officials coordinator, that's a hell of a business card to put out there. His name's Steve Shaw. He told ESPN that the combined changes are estimated to shorten the average length of game by 7 to 8 minutes, which isn't, that's not what they're going for. They're not going for time shortening. They want less plays run, right? So they do say that the combined would actually reduce the game by 8 plays. Which, there you go, 8 plays. That's what they're trying to get down.
So at 8 plays, the average college football game will still have 17 more snaps than an NFL game.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And that's because the NFL utilizes a huddle.
Right. They don't flashcard in their plays from the sidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with the first down thing. What else?
I think that's the one that makes the biggest change, right? Is the running clock after a first down. Because think about it, in the first and third half, that clock stops after every first down, and teams that go marching down the field, picking up chunk plays.
Yeah, and you don't realize it in the first and third quarters, right? But seconds. You do notice it in the second and fourth quarters a lot.
Right. Which is where it should be, that should be the differentiation between college and the NFL. There should be some differentiation.
I do. It's 1 foot for a catch.
Anyways, that got us back to football. Shall we keep talking football?
Yeah, let's keep talking some foosball there. Speaking of rule changes, let's just go ahead and hop into the NFL on one of the rule changes that I saw proposed there. Looks like the Rams, I believe it was the Rams in the rules committee, proposed the rule change to make roughing the passer reviewable. What are your guys' thoughts on that one?
I guess I'm not opposed to it necessarily, but I don't understand looking at these in slow motion. Right, it does take away from the spirit of the game and all these replays. And I understand that you want it to be right, but there's still a craft that these referees have at a high collegiate and NFL level to be able to get these plays right at such a lightning quick pace. The errors are bound to happen, and for a society that is all about give everybody another chance and everybody's all inclusive and blah, and all the things. So why can't we forgive a referee for screwing up a play? Do you know how many holding calls they miss? Like, let's make that reviewable. Like, if you're going to make roughing the passer reviewable, make holding reviewable, make all of it reviewable. So that way, any call on the field, you still only have 2 challenges. any call made can be reviewable, whether it was called or not called, and save that for crucial times. And let's see how these coaches swallow their red flags until it's crunch time, when they think something, a defensive team trying to make a stop, right, is being held and they think they want to do it. And then that way you can have a challenge on defense that's, more than just, well, did he catch it or not and everything else. But
right.
It's it's not Madden, right? Like, it's not AI done, and it's not, it just, nope, yep, here's holding, and arbitrarily they call it some games, and some games they don't, and everything else. Like, why don't we just call it by the rule book, and then let's worry about what's reviewable and what's not.
It's so hard because there are so many cameras at these games now, right? Like, there are so many cameras, and you can see every little detail that, and then you have the benefit of seeing it slowed down, through replay. Really, the NFL is its own worst enemy here because they got so big, right? And they got so many cameras at every game. Even on your random, Sunday afternoon game between 3 and 6 teams, like, there's still a ton of cameras there, right? Not to the level of the Super Bowl, but like, there's still a lot of cameras there. So you're going to see that. And I don't know. Kevin, I agree with you. I think there is some merit to letting the officials officiate the game, because that's kind of part of it, right? It's kind of part of figuring out, what can I do? What can't I do? Unfortunately, there's a lot of interpretation in the NFL rulebook, right? There's not, I go back to hockey where there's very little room for interpretation as to what is a penalty and what isn't when it comes to the game. And that's just, how that game is played now and the types of plays that happen. But I think there is some, hey, look, we drew this crew. We know this crew doesn't like to throw the flag for, interior lineman holding. They tend to let some more things go. And then you get this other crew and they're different. And that's just human nature, right? We're all different people. We all view things differently. We can view the same thing 3 different ways on this show, right? Like, it's the same thing, but we all see it 3 different ways. So I do think that there is some pageantry that goes along with that, but cameras don't lie. And that's the hard thing. Cameras don't miss things. Cameras don't blink, right?
I just think hockey does well without review, except for scoring plays for the most part, right? Like, hockey doesn't really, and it works.
They review some head contact penalties, but beyond that, yeah. Soccer's the same way. They don't review penalties. They do scoring plays. Tennis doesn't have any review, the best I know of, unless you guys know something about the sport that I don't. Basketball, for the most part, the review on basketball comes on flagrant 1 or flagrant 2, right? It's the severity of penalty, and every once in a while, a buzzer beater or scoring play, right? Like, it's not, that's a charge or that's a block, right? They don't do that. Do we really need it? Like, we live through all or
this
out of
stuff.
bounds,
like,
right? We touched it last.
Like, I just don't know that we need this. Like, you want to talk about what slows down a game? It's these damn replays.
Yes.
Like, don't have the referees do it, right? You have the eye in the sky. Have New York referee the game from the field. Like, the referees are there to maintain the integrity of the game, spot the ball, score, not score, out of bounds, incomplete, whatever. But as far as penalties go, have the eye in the sky do it, because you have all those cameras there.
Right.
That way it takes it out of their hands. It gets buzzed down. They click their little microphone over. They listen for 5 seconds, and then they walk out to the middle of the field and repeat what was just told to them in their ear. Who cares?
Right.
It's the same result.
And then coaches won't be able to argue and waste time that way and all that stuff, because, hey, look, this is not me. You got your beef is with somebody 3,000 miles away from us right now.
Yeah, exactly. Blame camera C. They didn't catch the angle. Like, what do you want to do? But this is where the game gets drug out and annoying, right? It's you're in a game. It's a tightly contested game. You just don't need 15 different penalties where it's slowed down. They have to huddle up in a 6-man crew. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. And then the head referee or the umpire finally, makes their decision. And here it is. And then everybody boos or everybody cheers and we move on to the next one. Like, quit bastardizing the play. Like, that's not what fans want to see.
I love the farce of them saying, upon further discussion, like they didn't just get it from somebody who was watching a camera. But they'll still say that over their microphone to the whole stadium. Upon further discussion,
right?
Like, didn't decide anything.
Well,
upon further discussion, we screwed up.
We did not get that one right.
Like I can get where the Rams are introducing that to make it a reviewable thing, but here's an idea: instead of making it roughing the pass, all of that stuff as a reviewable play call, just make it to the point where you can actually touch the quarterback. There's the idea, right? Like I get that we want to try and protect the quarterbacks, right? And every team wanting to do that, but that's an invention that has sprung up over the last 5-6 years, realistically, right? There was a lot of times that these quarterbacks used to actually get hit and have to use to actually make football plays, and part of dealing with that was a 300-pound lineman falling on you.
Could you imagine the 49ers quarterback situation if you could actually hit their quarterbacks?
Yeah.
Like, and low-hanging fruit there, but you guys get what I'm after, right? Like, what the heck you're going to do? Or 2 years ago when the entire Broncos quarterback room got sidelined because of quarantine policies and close contacts.
They got put in COVID jail. Yeah.
Right? Like, could you imagine that? Like, and I'm not necessarily against it. Like, I think teams should be able to carry an emergency quarterback on their roster for random situations, such as what happened to the Niners, or I'd say the Broncos, but even the emergency quarterback would have been put in quarantine that game. Like, that was just nuts. But yeah, these guys are athletes too. Like, let them get hit a little bit. It's okay.
Yeah. So
I think the players that we have to thank, in air quotes, for the quarterbacks or porcelain dolls is really Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. Like those are the two guys that you have to thank for the fact that quarterbacks are no longer playing tackle football. They are in fact playing flag football, and you're not allowed to so much as sneeze on them.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. Let's go ahead and hit up some cap casualties here. We there have been some few cap casualties out there, and lo and behold, we called a whole lot of those last week. Any that came as a shock or surprise to you?
No, there really weren't any surprises.
No, because I think we called about every one of them that last week when we were on the air. So,
I think the biggest surprise is not a cap casualty, right? And that's the Titans are gonna hang on to Tannehill, right? Like, I thought that was an interesting move.
Something tells me that deal's got to get restructured though, with the wake of all of their other issues. But yeah, that was really surprising to me on as well. But Leonard Fournette today also they're cutting ways with him. We called that one last week as well. Any other cap casualties you guys see potentially coming out here before on kind of that March 15th start of the new year?
I'm sure that there's a couple that are possibilities, right? But I think a lot of it's what players are willing to restructure, what kind of is going on. I'm still kind of interested to see what the Cowboys and Zeke are going to do. Mm-hmm. To try and make way. I'm interested to see what the Giants are trying to do to be able to sign Saquon and Daniel Jones. But I think there's more to come. I mean, the Titans are still over the cap, I believe. So are the Falcons. So are the Saints. So are the Buccaneers. Like, that entire division. I just realized that as I listed those teams off. That entire division's over the salary cap. There's still things that they need to do. So I don't know enough about it to think if it's going to be before the league or before the new year, or if it's going to be one of those post June 1st designations. as they play around with the money on that side of things. But we're not done yet. I mean, there's still talks of Joe Mixon. There's still talks of Tyler Boyd. There's still, you kind of go up and down the list. What's Miami going to do with 16 running backs on the roster?
Right.
Like, I think it's really only 7, but still, like, they're not keeping all those guys. So there's definitely moves ahead of us, but I don't know that there's going to be any big name that necessarily hits free agency. Leonard Fournette might be the biggest name that's non-quarterback that's out there right now.
It's true. Very true. Leslie Frazier coming through today, talking about the fact that he is going to take a step away from the game in 2023. So the Bills will be looking for a defensive coordinator. Any thoughts or reactions to that news?
I find it interesting that he waited this long. Like, why wait until the coaching carousel is basically done and all these other coordinators have been chosen? So you wonder what the Bills have in-house to kind of replace that, but I don't understand the timing of it.
I mean, McDermott's a defensive guy, right? So, it wouldn't be like McDermott losing his offensive coordinator. McDermott knows how to coach defenses. It's not, it is interesting timing, and maybe something came up and you just don't know, right? But I think if there's a position, or a positional coach that the Bills could afford to lose because of who their head coach is, it's the D coordinator.
Fair enough. Yeah,
that's fair.
So Derek Carr heading to the combine, and no, he's not heading over there to participate in drills and try and rerun the 40. He's heading there to meet with some teams. Any thoughts on Derek Carr heading to the combine?
Heck, I hope it works out for him. I mean, that's where all these players are. It's where these teams are. It's where the agents are. He's a full. With him and how he was cut beforehand, like, he's free to do whatever he wants. And so, what better place to go and get all these things knocked out at once? And it's the off season. He wants to spend time with his family too. So, what better place to go? You get one-stop shopping. You can have all the interviews, talk to everybody that you and your agent want to talk to. You're there for 3 days. And then you get to go back home and be with your family, and you're not flying back and forth across country trying to figure it all out. You have the meetings, and then you leave it up to your agent. So good for him, man. I'm surprised you don't see more of this, or at least more of it talked about. But it absolutely makes sense of why he's going, why he wants to get it all knocked out in one setting, and then let the bidding war begin.
Yeah, this is like the to steal from another sport, like Major League Baseball, they have the winter meetings, where they all get together in, what is that, December or whatever, in Florida, and everybody kind of does some jockeying with agents and GMs and trying to figure it out. I do happen to know from experience a story that was told to me, a guy who I knew who was retired from the NFL, like he was out of the league for a year. He still had, his agent was still his agent. That's a close personal bond that you have with somebody who's made you a couple $1 million, so the agent went to the combine and, started talking to teams and was like, hey, here's a list of guys that, weren't in the league last year, but do have some experience. Any of them that you're interested in? And this guy got another shot, so, there is a lot of that's going on where agents will go with a list. It just so happens that Derek Carr is going to be there in person, because I think he has earned that right to be there in person and doesn't have to have an agent speak on his behalf, right?
Oh, his agent's going to be there too.
Oh, for sure. But it's not just a mediation through phone calls. Derek Carr has earned the right to go and talk with all of these teams face to face. And so I think, to your point, Kevin, it just makes sense to go to where everybody is for a couple days and then, figure it out from there. But at least you get a good feel for everything when you have those personal one-on-one conversations with people. It's a lot easier to get a feel for somebody when you're face to face with them versus, through a phone call with your agent playing telephone, back and forth. And, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? Well, here's how they were kind of, Derek Carr gets to see all of that in person.
Right. Well, not only that, but you're there with the decision makers, right? You're meeting with coaches, you're meeting with the GMs in a lot of cases, those types of things. And you're able to, right? Like you sit there and you think about it, right? Like the NFL, the GMs, the scouts are, they get just as kind of antsy about some of these rookies coming out and the decisions that are going to be made and where they're, where they kind of start putting guys in their rank order of things and kind of adjusting the big board there. So, that's a brilliant move to go there as those decisions are starting to be frameworked out and really you'll be kind of put into place as teams will then go into free agency and then go into the draft, really put their draft board together. Might as well get in front of those guys and do your best to impress the decision makers there to really bring that thing home for you and land the spot that you want to go to. So I'm a fan of the move as well. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, as always, as we get, kind of spinning towards the combine, right? Like skill position players, right? Just trying to see what some of these metrics are that teams fall in love with. It's not a great wide receiver class from all accounts. Like it's actually much more tight end and running back heavy as far as skill position players go.
It's a really good running back class.
Yeah. So selfishly, I'm really, really interested to see what Darnell Washington from Georgia does at the combine and see what his measurables are, because the dude's a freak athlete on the field. But I am interested in the Underwear Olympics, what his bench press is, what his shuttle cone is, what his 40 is, like his vert. Like he is extremely dynamic. And I don't know that he's the route runner that Gronk was coming out of college, but he has a lot of his framework is very similar. He's 6'7". He's actually a little bit thicker than what Gronk is. He has a bit more muscle on him right away, where Gronk had to, kind of build up into that. And so depending on what some of these are and how teams try to use him, I could see where a team would be drawn to him with the possibility of, right? Because you can't coach size, right? You can't coach some of these measurables that he already has in place. And so if he shows really good hands and he's going through these drills, it's not going to take a offensive minded coach much time to go, you know what, I can really use that, because he is a massive mismatch on the field. And yes, I can keep him in, because with Brock Bowers at Georgia, he blocked. He was in line more than he ran routes at Georgia, because you have Brock Bowers who will come out next year, and I will go on and on about him a year from now. Like I won't do it right now, but I'm telling you, a year from now, he is a first-round tight end. There's really no question about it. Like if he could come out this year, he'd be a first-rounder this year too. But with Darnell Washington, his size and strength alone should set him apart from a lot of that class. And if he shows his hands as good as they're reported to be, he didn't get to show it as much at Georgia, but it was always reported that he had really good hands. They just had someone come behind him who was even better. I mean, he could be a difference maker just at that tight end position in the way that people, maybe not in the way people thought Kyle Pitts would be, but in a more all-around role, because now he's more of that George Kittle role where he can block really well and get his in the receiving game, or Delaney Walker is another one who kind of did that, right, with San Francisco and then Tennessee. And there's another San Francisco tight end that did it for a few years, and that's why Walker left. Neither here nor there. All I'm saying is, like, he is one of like 3 or 4 tight ends that are going to be able to make their mark right away offensively, and not just in the run game or blocking game for the NFL.
I can't wait for that dude's name to come to us when we're in the middle of another thought here, and then we're just shout it out. And that's
I'm gonna look it up now because it's gonna bug the crap out of me.
Was it Vernon?
Vernon Davis flashed, but he was more maybe that who I was thinking, but he was more of a receiving guy. He was never really a blocker.
I was thinking
Gator J saying Hooper. He's also saying, "What's up, fella? Hope all is well." But
what's up, Gator J? I was thinking of somebody who played for Chicago that went to Jacksonville. Who was that? It just happened. Because maybe the name.
The only tight end I can think moving to Kellen Winslow was a Brown.
Yeah, he was Cleveland. Who just went to Jacksonville? I think there was this last year.
Evan Ingram.
That was Ingram, but he was with the Giants.
Right. And before that, you had Dan Arnold make some news going to the Jaguars.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't him. I was thinking of a
Dirty Bird thinking that it was Vernon Davis.
We should just do this. This is where we get all our comments.
I think y'all are right. I think it might have been Vernon Davis, and now that I'm thinking about that, he was more of a pass catcher than a true run blocker anyway. He just kept getting nicked up towards right kind of in the prime of his career, right? Thought he was going to break out, and then he just never quite got back to, the pinnacle of where we thought he could be at, just because of injuries and some offensive philosophy changes, because he's the one who got kicked off the field with Mike Singletary as head coach, right? Him and Vernon Davis got into it. He told him, get the F out of here, like go to the locker room.
Yeah.
What a good time. I guess what I'm looking forward to in the combine is to see, obviously there's going to be a name that none of us, unless you're a sicko, none of us have heard of, that comes out and just does something stupid athletic, right? Like we'll run some stupid time in the 40 and you'll be like, oh, hey. My favorite part about the combine is that none of this crap really matters. Most of the on-field stuff, these guys there's so much tape on these guys now. Even if you play at a lower level or a smaller school, there's so much tape on you that like doing this stuff, it doesn't matter.
Yes,
Delaney
Walker. Thank you very much.
Dirty Bird _TV on YouTube, helping you out there, Kevin.
I told you it'd come to us.
Well, he came to Dirty Bird. Yes, exactly.
Dirty Bird. But like some of this stuff, like, yes, bench press. Oh, how strong you are. Like, yes, the 40 does have some merit, but for the most part, like it's the first 10. How fast can you get to top speed, right? The first 10 yards. Can you get to top speed in the first 10 yards, first 15 yards, whatever it is? Like that's really what it should be. It shouldn't be, the 40-yard dash is a 40-yard dash, but I do appreciate them making them big boys run that. Like that is some good free comedy right there. Like you are never going to see, as an offensive lineman, they are never going to have to run 40 yards, dead sprint. And if they are, something tragic has gone wrong on the field, that they are trying to chase down some fast DB that just intercepted them. And it's not going to matter either way. So I couldn't agree more with Gator J here. Don't over-evaluate the combine. It is fun. It is entertaining. Treat it as such. The real work is done off the field when the guys do their Wonderlicks, their measurables, right?
The medical exams,
the medical exams, the meetings with the teams, because this is where you make an impression, where you become, where all of a sudden you were, this quarterback out of this no-name school, and now you're a draft pick, right? Yeah. Like, or this running back out of this no-name, and now you're a draft pick. So that's really where the work gets done. We don't get to see that,
right? And I do for the players. I think it's really cool for them, right? And absolutely, right? Don't over-evaluate the process. But for these guys, and the 300 roughly 300 participants that get invited to the combine, their metrics and how they perform, if they're choosing to do whatever drill, could mean the difference in millions of dollars, literally, right?
Yeah.
Between their
for
draft
sure.
spot and where they fall, or, if they get drafted or if they go as an undrafted free agent or something like that. So while it doesn't necessarily all hone up to fantasy and how we want to translate it, for these guys, it does still mean everything, right? It is a form of job interview, and the difference between rounds and even positioning within rounds, right? The top of the third round pays a hell of a lot different than, the compensatory pick at the bottom of the third round, right? Like, so it does equate to dollars and cents for these players. So I appreciate the fact that they're going out and busting their tails trying to put forth more good things on tape, right? Not that you can't see it on the field, but more good things on tape to make teams really contemplate, hey, do we need to grab this guy here in the third, or do we think that he could fall to the fourth? Like, is there enough dirt, right, wrong, or indifferent on this guy that he falls to the fourth, and then we feel like we get a bargain, not only because of the talent, but now we're not, we just saved ourselves $2 million.
I mean, think of it as when we're doing our fantasy drafts, right? Hey, I kind of want this guy, but I think I can wait and I can get him another round. And then you feel like you've pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, right? Like that's kind of the rest of your league. That's what these GMs are doing right now. They're doing what we do. Obviously, with much more on the line. I mean,
higher stakes,
a little more higher stakes. But I mean, it's all the same, right? Cash and trophies. That's all we're all after.
Oh, absolutely. Love that you worked that in there.
You're welcome.
Speaking of you're welcome, Dirty Bird also saying you're welcome for the Delaney Walker deal there, and Gator J chiming in too, saying that don't over evaluate, but he will say that needs to see what on film show up at the combine as well to be confirmed there.
I will add one other thing about making the big guys run the 40-yard dash. It is an effort thing, right? Teams do want to see effort, and because effort is something that cannot be coached, right? That is a want to that you have on your own. So there is an effort to it. So there is point, as Kevin said, to making sure that that the dollars and cents on it, but it's also effort.
Mid-level, high-energy guys have longer lasting, more fruitful NFL careers for the most part. For the most part, there's exceptions,
right?
But for the most part, than high-talented guys who just rely on their talent alone.
Correct.
So here's a fun one. I'm scrolling through NFL.com, right, and they're talking some of the stuff about the 40 and all of that. So here's a fun little game, right? Like we were talking about how some of these drills and, just kind of putting this back into a fantasy perspective here. Since 2013 is the numbers that I have listed here for the top 10 40-yard dashes. 2013 through now, so the last 10 years or so, top 10 40-yard dashes. I'm going to take guesses as to how many of those players actually had any fantasy relevance for at least one season.
3.
Okay. Alex, your guess.
So we're saying
top 10
about 100 or just the 10?
Just the 10 out of those 10 players over the last 10 years that have achieved the top 10 40, right? You're talking 10 players total.
Yeah.
10 players total. So
three feels like a good number. But I can't take 3 because my esteemed co-host already has. So I will Price is Right him and say 2.
Okay. Well, there is no Price is Right. It's you either got it or you didn't. But thanks for the thought there. We'll go through these, and I think that there's only one, but I will take different opinions here as well. Number 10, Jacoby Ford. Wide receiver out of Clemson. I would say that was a no fantasy seasons worthwhile there.
Yeah.
Number 9, JJ Nelson, wide receiver out of UAB. I'd say that's a nope. Number 8 was Jalen Mickrick, cornerback. That's a nope. Tyrone Calico, a wide receiver out of Middle Tennessee. That was a nope. Stanford Route, cornerback out of Houston. That's a nope. Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver out of Texas. Maybe. He's had some flashes, some games.
Yeah.
Jerome Mathis, wide receiver out of Hampton at number 4 fastest. Dry Archer, running back out of Kent State. I'm going to go with a nope there. Chris Johnson, running back out of East Carolina. I would say that's a definite yes. And then John Ross.
Never heard of him.
Wide receiver out of Washington would be a nope on that one.
What was Tyreek's? Did Tyreek not do the 40?
At the combine. He may not have done it at the combine. Did he?
And wasn't Tyreek Hill a late pick as well?
Well,
I'm guessing
doesn't matter. It's his 40 time that you said.
Did he even go to
True.
the 40?
That's the point that I'm going at is sometimes those late picks.
Combine. Yeah, not everybody that gets picked goes to the combine.
Yeah, let's see here. So they're listing his 40 as a 2.49, but I can't distinguish if that was combine time or just a
pro day
thing. Pro day score was a 4.29. So it looks like he did pro day on that one, but I'm not seeing.
He was one of those guys who didn't run at the combine. Okay.
That's what I'm seeing. That's what it looks like there.
Which there is some benefit to not running at the combine, right? You put down a slow time at the combine and guess what everybody remembers? That slow time you ran in Indianapolis.
Yeah, that's true. Like you could trip out of the gate in Indianapolis and they'd still hold that time over you as opposed to your pro day. So if
you're not 100%, you don't run the 40 at the combine.
No. And these players have smartened up to that. They understand it's a business decision, rightfully so. Like Jalen Carter, right? The defensive tackle from Georgia came out this week and said, I will show up, but I'm not testing. I'm going to do it at home.
Right.
You know, where I know. And I don't blame these guys. No. Right. I don't. Yes, you show up. You go through your Wonderlic test. You go through the interviews. You shake hands and meet these people and cheer on your teammates and you know your friends from high school that you haven't seen in a couple of years that maybe you get to see there because all these guys come from the same 15 high schools.
IMG Academy.
No, that's one of them. But I mean, yeah. So. Fair enough, but yes, I would have gotten that wrong, Derek. Obviously, I did get it wrong, but I was thinking Tyreek in one of those.
Fair enough.
And it was a pro day time. My apologies.
No worries, but I bring that up simply to just kind of bring home that point that you guys are making. There's some of this stuff that, quite frankly, just because you show up well in a measurable thing there doesn't necessarily translate either to long-term NFL success and or fantasy success out there either way. So Steve Ho saying that point is, Craig James, where are you when in doubt? Run the football. Part of the reason why he won a Yahoo Championship fantasy football.
Good on you.
So absolutely. Little SMU Pony Excess there, huh? With the Craig James reference. I like that. Steve, I don't know that many folks out there watching that got that reference there. The Craig James from the mid 80s there, but I like it. All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up real quick. We touched on this briefly last week, but it looks like the Ravens and Lamar Jackson are seemingly at a bit of an impasse with the salary. Ravens reportedly, from what I saw out there, reportedly offered a 5-year, $250 million deal, but the guaranteed money was only somewhere in about the $130 million category there. Lamar is looking for a fully guaranteed contract in the way of Deshaun Watson type of thing there. What do we think, guys? Does a deal get done here, or are we seeing Lamar go on a franchise tag? And if they do tag him, is Lamar going to play under that franchise tag?
I think we're going to see a tag. I mean, and we kind of touched on this a couple weeks ago, but we're going to do it again. I understand why Lamar is trying to get his. I understand why he's trying to get Deshaun Watson type money. but $25 million a year, and only half of that, a little over half of that, is guaranteed. The Ravens are slapping him in the face like that. That's
it's $50 million a year. He's getting $50 million a year, and
50.
roughly,
I apologize. Sorry.
And roughly 25 of it a year is guaranteed.
There we go. My apologies. I need to listen to what you're saying then.
Math
250 over 5.
Right. So it's 50 a year with about 130 of it guaranteed.
Let me rethink about this.
Look, Deshaun Watson's deal really, really jostled the market, right? I think there were a lot of players that were very happy for Deshaun Watson when he signed that deal. There were a lot of owners that were very upset with the Haslams for signing that deal and doing that. I think that we will see a tag because I fully guarantee that that Lamar Jackson is going to want a fully guaranteed contract. And I fully expect that Baltimore will not offer him a fully guaranteed contract because I don't think that's how they do business. And nobody has done business that way until the Browns did with Deshaun Watson. And look at where it got them. They did not get to the playoffs this year. Granted, he wasn't there for 11 games, but I don't think that these two sides, if Lamar Jackson doesn't budge off of wanting a fully guaranteed contract, a deal is not going to get done. I just don't see it. And I don't know that any other team is going to be offering him a fully guaranteed contract that is the length and the money that he desires. I mean, you could definitely see a team being like, yeah, we'll pay you, $35 million. There you go. For 1 year. Go ahead. Like that's going to be what happens. I fully respect Lamar Jackson wanting to get his, as you said, Kevin. I fully respect that. I also understand that the NFL is a business and these owners are also trying to make money. And you can't sink all that money into a player that, let's be honest, hasn't been there when it matters the most for your team the last 2 seasons. I think we see a tag. I don't know that Lamar plays under the tag, but that is what I envision, is that he will get tagged this year, and then they'll see if, either whoever blinks first, right?
I mean, the last player we saw not get tagged and then not play was Le'Veon Bell, and that one ended up not necessarily working out for Le'Veon Bell there in terms of money and all of that down the road. But to put this in perspective, right? Like Deshaun Watson, yes, has the $230 million guaranteed money there. However, when you look at it, Russell Wilson, who signed a monster deal as well, $165 million guaranteed. That's about $35 million guaranteed difference away there. Kyler Murray, again, a big deal that was in the similar kind of length and overall numbers as Lamar, 160. Aaron Rodgers, 150 million guaranteed. Josh Allen, 150 million guaranteed. Patrick Mahomes, 141 million guaranteed. And Patrick Mahomes, $141 million guaranteed was based over the course of a 10-year type of deal. Matthew Stafford, $130 million guaranteed. Dak Prescott, $126 million guaranteed. So I don't know that the Ravens are really that far off in that $130 million guarantee, especially when you're talking about, putting up in that $50 million a year category for him, or that 250 over 5 years category. Like that puts him in the same richest contract by a quarterback in the league, and would put him as one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. I get wanting the guaranteed money. I get that that Lamar Jackson plays the game differently than a lot of other quarterbacks, in which there's much more risk associated with how he plays the game. The fact that he, runs the ball as much as he does versus a guy like, Patrick Mahomes or Matt Stafford, that far more pocket passer type of QBs.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think it needs to be more. And here's why. TV revenue's going up. This is all funny money anyway, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter what you sign the guy to. If it's the fully guaranteed does, but if it's any percentage of not fully guaranteed, you move that money around. So if it's some other total that he's looking for, instead of, having it basically half guaranteed, right? That $130 million guarantee, bump it up to 160, bump it up to 165. Like, let's see if that, sweetens the deal a little bit. Put him in that Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers type stratosphere. And let's see what it is, because it's funny money anyway. It really doesn't matter. With the way he plays, Derek, you had a good point, right? This leads towards Lamar doing his own thing, but he also doesn't have an agent to tell him that this is a good deal and take it. Like,
right.
It's Lamar and his mama, right? And if mama doesn't like it, then my guess is Lamar ain't doing it. So it is going to be an ugly, drawn out thing. And the problem with that, when you're representing yourself, is you see the dark side of all of these dealings. And you better believe that the Ravens organization, is bashing him over the head about what he can't do, right? You're not throwing it outside the numbers well. You're not doing this. You're not doing that, And Lamar's going, well, I can do it. You guys just don't give me any weapons to try and do it with, right? Like, who have been my receivers to throw it to? So that'll go back and forth. Spinning off Lamar Jackson deal, I will tell you, if I am the Cincinnati Bengals or even the LA Chargers, I am trying to get Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert signed like RFN, because
yesterday, yeah.
If this deal continues to inch closer to what Lamar Jackson wants, then it's that game of, okay, who's on top of who? Because I don't think there's much of a doubt, at least off performance, Burrow's a better quarterback than Lamar Jackson, right? Lamar offers more with his legs, but Joe Burrow offers, longevity and back-to-back deep playoff runs, and the fact that he can beat Patrick Mahomes and he can beat Josh Allen, and that we've seen these things done. Lamar's had a couple good games against each one of them, but for the most part, he does kind of fall flat. The team around him doesn't support it. And with those two guys being the next guys up, their agents are dragging their feet, right? If you're Burrow and you're Herbert's agent, you're dragging your feet. Hold on. Let's see how this plays out. But if you're the team's like, come on, like, let's get to the table here. Like, what's this going to take? What do we need to do? Like, let's plan for our future. Let's do all this. And it is, it's a dangerous proposition. And it goes back to what I think we talked about this at some point, is at what point are teams just going to offer a percentage of the salary cap? Like, look, man, this is going to be a fluctuating scale. All trends, tendencies, and inclinations lead towards this just increasing exponentially year by year. So if we give you 15% of the salary cap, right, it's over that 12 to 12.5% that Derek kind of says is that danger area, right, as far as Super Bowls. But it's enough to really set the precedent of, hey, we want you here. You're our guy. And yeah, it's going to fluctuate a little bit, but here's where it is. You are going to be 15% of our salary cap for the next 6 years, whatever the deal is, 5 years. And we will guarantee 70% of it. Right? Like, we increase the guarantee because you're taking a flex pay schedule, essentially. So we'll increase the guarantee, but this is what we need.
I take a much darker view to it. I think we are at a point where we were however many years ago it was, and Jamarcus Russell really changed the rookie pay scale, right? Remember?
It was more Sam Bradford's doing than a Jamarcus Russell. But.
Sure. But it was, they started paying these, top-end draft picks gobs and gobs of money right away. And the NFL and the NFLPA had to sit down and say, okay, you're right. Because it was the market says, this is what the market says, the number 1 draft pick made this much last year. Well, you guys have X amount more. So the number 1 draft pick this year should make this much. And it just kept going and going and going and going to the point where the NFL said, this is unsustainable for us. And the NFLPA said, okay, we'll come to the table and figure something out. And they did, right? They came up with this new rookie pay scale where, the NFL gets the 5th-year option for first-round picks. They make, an X amount of dollars. Like, that's the most that they can sign. You can get a signing bonus. That's fine, whatever. But, in terms of annual salary, here's what it is based on where you were picked. I think that's kind of the direction that we're headed.
Oh, I hope not.
And I hope not either. I hope not.
Because this is capitalism at its finest, right? These players are taking, these are my services. This is what I can offer. This is whatever. And it goes to the highest bidder. Like that is capitalism at its finest.
But I think at some point the NFLPA is going to step in to try and defend their players from not getting what they're owed, right? The NFLPA is going to do that. I have a feeling that that's what is going to happen. That's the negativity, that's my much darker purview on this. But I think that the NFL is just, owners ultimately have the last say. And there's 32 of those dudes in the world. And they are some of the most powerful people in terms of, money and influence. And
So where does Lamar Jackson rank? There's 32 starting positions in the NFL. On a scale from 1 to 32, where's Lamar Jackson fall into?
He's there. He's in the top 32, obviously.
Well, yes.
Because there are a number of teams that would want him. But
absolutely. And I'm saying he's inside the top 20, right? No one's going to argue that. Is he inside the top 15?
I'd say he's probably about in that top 10 is kind of where I would put him as far as an overall.
That's not the world that we live in, because Lamar Jackson does see himself as one of the top 10. But do NFL owners see him as somebody that they're worth? That's where you have to call his bluff, right?
That's the point that Kevin's making.
That's where you call his bluff. Like, look, we're willing to rebuild, and we trust that our fan base will give us enough grace that if we let you walk out the door, we will be able to recoup, probably 2 third-round compensation picks on top of whatever else, because the Ravens draft unbelievably well in NFL comparisons, right? So they trust their process enough,
right?
That here's your number, right? We see you in the same light as Dak Prescott. Different skill sets, but overall contribution to the team, we see you as the same guy.
Right. And actually this will be really interesting. And Kevin, maybe you've got a better insight than any of the rest of us, having spent a lot of time watching the new Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator over the last few years down there in Georgia. Like, is this one of those that we're going to see him remake this offense from being this very run heavy deal under Roman, or are we going to see where his concepts are going to want to pass the ball more?
I think my guess and assumption is it's going to be more of the same yet different, right? Like, I think some of your route combinations are going to be a bit different. I don't think I'd argue that the Georgia skill position rooms had more talent than the Ravens do.
Fair enough.
Right? I mean, which is crazy to say, these guys are professionals, but after you traded away Hollywood,
right?
I'd argue that what Roman had, especially
was with Bateman going down.
Well, Bateman went down, but I mean, even what could have been in 2021, back when Pickens was playing but was hurt most of that season, right? And you have these guys, you have Darian Smith, who went over to Alabama, and Mitchell, who was a big part of that team, and then Ladd McConkey, who showed up. So there's pieces that he can make receivers work, but he's got to have receivers that can actually run routes. So I think Bateman will work. He will find a way to have Bateman work pretty well in that offense. Mark Andrews will continue to be successful. Isaiah Likely, I think, is another candidate. You'll see him get Isaiah Likely into the fold more than what Greg Roman did, right? So you're going to have a lot of those running concepts. There'll be definitely RPO presence because of Lamar, so that will be a more of an influx than what you saw at Georgia. But Stetson Bennett wasn't afraid to run. I mean, so it does work, and he can make it work, but ultimately – pro game defenses are different, right? They're faster, they're stronger, they're bigger. And so it is going to be a challenge for him to get some of these guys in space because he doesn't have athletes that are just better than everybody else like he had at Georgia.
Fair enough.
Right. And that's the difference between your college and your pro game, as we all know. Like you can take an average player in college and with a really good game plan, you can see him create space and look great. Matt Rule does a great job of that, right? He did not do it at Carolina, but if you go back to Baylor, Matt Rule did a great job of getting average players in space and made them look really good.
Yep.
So
he did the same thing when he was at Temple too.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Just people don't watch Temple football.
Yeah. Why would you?
Well, exactly. So yes, you're going to see a couple things different. I think he's going to be able to have there's going to be some more intelligence to the passing game. But ultimately, I don't know if you can trust Lamar Jackson to drop back 30 times a game, right? You still need to keep him in that 20 to 25 dropbacks.
Well, you can't let him throw the ball more than about 15 yards down the field because he'll airmail it 5 yards over his receiver head on just about every one of those.
Yeah. Short
of getting a Hollywood Brown or an elite speed guy that can actually, close the distance on those overthrows. Like I don't know that the Ravens are going to be able to bring somebody in to do that this offseason either.
Mecole Hardman.
Yeah. That's fine.
I mean, a guy who has tons of speed, right? Never really got his chance at Kansas City, but kind of fills that old school John Ross game plan where he can get down the field, he can get behind people if you scheme it correctly and take your shots appropriately. But ultimately, the Baltimore team's going to struggle, right? It's not a good draft class for receiver. It's not a good free agent class for receiver. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to have to beef up your offensive line. Like, that's what they're going to lean on, offensive line and defense.
They could go get Kenny Golladay. I hear he's looking for work these days.
Shoot. I mean, yeah, I mean, well, what am I? Jacoby Myers. No, there we go. That's the name I'm thinking of. Kind of the top receiver out there, right? For all intents and purposes. Juju, right? Juju's out there. I mean, that could be another guy that could fit that type of offense because he can run that underneath routes and get open enough. But the problem is you have too many underneath guys, and now you're eating into where Mark Andrews lives.
Mm-hmm.
Because as good as Mark Andrews is, he doesn't run like receiver. And so you take that, again, that Brock Bowers element, you don't have a comp for that on the Baltimore Ravens. Mark Andrews is a better catcher probably than Darnell Washington, but I mean, that's your true tight end, right? He lines up in line, he can go out, you can put him into the slot from time to time. That might be what you see more of, is Andrews in the slot and getting some off coverage and seeing if they're going to bring a linebacker out there and allow you to run up the middle and use your RPO, or if they're going to drop a safety down in on him and then you're trying to throw balls, up the seam or kind of a deep middle where he can body up and get in front of those safeties. You'll probably see a little bit more of that.
That's fair. All right. Well, any other thoughts on Lamar, the Ravens, and their contract dispute? All righty. Let's go ahead and we'll
get your popcorn ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Ready. Yeah, this one here could get messy before it gets done. All righty. Real quick, let's go ahead and let's just take we're entering into the NFL draft season. And as we get ready for the 2023 draft, we're going to take a look back at the NFL 2022 draft and take a real quick peek at it. now that you have the hindsight of a full year in, to put that in perspective there, what team are you saying ended up having the best draft last year? What team had the worst draft of the 2022 season?
I'm going to say I'm really proud of myself because I did this exercise without any other consensus. I just looked up, here's the draft class team by team and jotted down the teams that I thought did the best. And as it turns out, I was pretty spot on with one of the other articles I found that kind of confirmed my own bias. So I will start. I had two that I thought had really good, and it should be no surprise because they had the most first rounders, but the rest of their draft was really good too. So my two were the Jets and the Lions. And I thought the Jets had it didn't translate really to wins, but there was productivity from their draft picks. And the Lions, I thought they got better. What a kick in the pants team that was. There's so many games that was like, probably should win that. And I think they're on the right path. And I think
the Lions win that division this year.
Yeah, I think they got better. And I think because now that all of the draft picks that they did have in this class, they had, again, 2 first rounders and then a 2, 3, 5, 2 6s and a 7 that they got some really good use out of. And a Jamison Williams, who didn't necessarily play all year, but showed some flash. I think that the Lions and the Jets were the 2 best drafts this past year.
I like it. Kevin, who do you think had the best draft?
I go back to the Ravens again, right? And I just still think the Ravens killed it, right? They had Kyle Hamilton as kind of their first round pick, right? A guy that a lot of people thought could go inside the top 10 as arguably the best safety in this class, and showed it on the field. He played well. Tyler Lindenbaum played well at center for the Ravens as he was getting adjusted to NFL life. And then they did a good job of drafting guys to fill holes and make impacts, right? So these picks that the Ravens didn't necessarily draft guys that jumped off the page, but they did draft guys who I think they all contributed, maybe outside of Charlie Kolar, their first tight end that they drafted, because Isaiah Likely overtook his spot, the second tight end they drafted, right? So the Missouri running back, Tyler Batty, there you go. He's probably the one guy who didn't do anything for him. I think they released him midway through the season. But outside of that, the Ravens still smoke the draft. Like, they just get guys to fill the holes they need. They never seem like they're in a rush to fill a particular position. They don't allow themselves to get cornered or pigeonholed into, okay, we have to take defensive end right here. Like, no matter what, we're just taking the best defensive end that comes across. Like, no, if it's not there, okay, well, we're not going to take defensive end. We'll take another cornerback, and we'll bolster up our secondary because that's the best player, and we can find ways to make him work. Even though we know we would like a defensive end, we will find ways around that. So I think the Ravens still had the best draft class, even though it was damn near a bunch of no names, right? Most people couldn't name a lot of guys in their draft class, but I thought that they still had a very, very solid draft. The worst draft is, in my opinion, the LA Rams. You're trading, this was.
They sold out. They sold out for a ring.
They sold out for the ring, and this is kind of what comes from it is they weren't able to address positions of need. They didn't have any high-end draft picks because they traded them all away, so their first pick was.
I have it because they're one of my 2 worsts.
Oh, man. Here we go.
Their first pick was
104.
104.
Yep,
yeah.
104 overall.
A guy who played 0 games for them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So Kyron Williams, the running back, was probably their best pick, right? And they got him at 164. He played, 3 games, got hurt, got nicked up. And so other than that, they just did not do anything to help themselves after paying all of this veteran talent and then having to let them go, there was no way for them to replenish it. So for me, it was the Rams. They suck it.
The Rams got a combined 9 starts out of their 8 players that they drafted.
Jeez.
They got a combined 9 starts.
The team that I think had the best draft class had 11 starts from one of their 7th rounders that they drafted on that one. So just to put that in perspective, a 7th rounder for this team started in 11 games versus the Rams' entire draft class starting 9 games for them.
Has this team had to recently visit a Justin's?
I don't get the reference.
A ring manufacturer.
Oh yes, they did, and that's part of the reason that they ended up so high. Is the Kansas City Chiefs? I think they had probably one of the best draft classes this past year, right? And they relied on those rookies to go through and win a championship. But you look at it, right? They took 2 first rounders. Both of those guys started double-digit games for them. Looking at it, they had like 9 guys that they drafted on this that had at least double-digit games played for them over the course of the season there, right? Like that's an incredibly deep draft class when you can go through and you've got guys that are starting playing in double-digit games for you, making meaningful contributions on the field, and you go out there and win the Super Bowl with a lot of those guys having direct impacts on that one as well. So the Chiefs were the guys I thought that pulled off the best draft class.
Okay, I'll get to my worst draft class here. And they had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 picks, if I'm counting correctly. Yeah, 10 picks, and they got a combined 20 starts out of those 10 picks. Now relate to it that only one of those guys contributed.
One of those guys started all 17 games. Yes. One of those guys started all 17 games. So outside of the one dude, a second round pick, a late second round pick, I might add, started all 17 games for them. The other 9 guys had 3 starts combined for them. And games played really wasn't all that great either, if we're just doing games that they appeared in. And that is the Minnesota Vikings. And that's not exactly how you want to start a new regime there in Minnesota. Now, granted, Minnesota had a lot of pieces already in place, so a draft class wasn't all that important. But you will see the flaws of last year's picks show up. Not usually you don't see it in the immediate future. You don't see the flaws in the immediate future. You do see the successes in the immediate future, but I do think you see the flaws year 2, year 3 down the road, when you have put 10 names you called 10 names, and you got 3 starts out of 9 of those guys. You take one guy out, and then it's 3 starts, and that is not a sustainable model. So the Minnesota Vikings were my worst class.
Fair enough. I'll see your Minnesota Vikings and raise you a team that out of their draft class, they had 1 player start 2 games for them this entire season. And it was out of necessity because their starting quarterbacks were hurt. So they had to start Skylar Thompson 2 different times. That, of course, is the Miami Dolphins, who, they traded away a lot of draft capital to bring guys in, especially Tyreek, which made a huge impact. I get that. But speaking on just the draft class here, right? Yeah, they don't draft until the 3rd round. They've got a 3rd, a 4th, 2 7th rounders. Out of all of those 4 guys combined to make 24 game appearances for them with only 2 starts. Like it was not a good draft class. We'll see what ends up happening here going forward. But, the Dolphins are a little bit strapped here of capital as well, having lost their first rounder due to the tampering with Tom Brady, and then trading away their other first rounder to the Broncos, who then sent that to the Saints. So they'll be not having another first round pick here coming up very shortly. So, but yeah, I would say the Dolphins are certainly in that mix there as well.
but famously, Mike McDaniel does come from. Oh no, he was on San Francisco's staff, wasn't he?
Yes,
he's a Shanahan. I was thinking that he was I misplaced him at the wrong LA team. Who the head coach had famously had a phrase about those draft picks.
Well, he and Sean McVay spent time together when went on staff with the Washington team.
In Washington, So they're cut from the same cloth, and their view of draft picks.
It's the same coaching tree, in my opinion. There, so between McVay and Shanahan, it's the same coaching tree, basically.
Right. They're all disciples of Mike.
Exactly. It all comes from the Shanahan tree. So we'll see how that one goes. But Mike was a pretty good drafter of players.
As a GM, he did okay.
So, absolutely. Any other thoughts here on good, bad, otherwise on the regrading of 2022 draft?
Man, if the Vikings don't get it right, like that team, oh man, those poor folks in Minnesota, they're just getting they can't catch a break.
Here's the interesting one. I think you've got some GMs out there, namely one in particular, drafting for his job this year, particularly George Payton.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that, especially because he's going to have to make a lot with a little,
right?
And not again. Here's the thing, though. I don't think the Broncos were missing that many pieces. I think there was just a level of what's the word I want to use here?
Incompetence.
There it is. From the top of the coach, from the coach down. And I think that I don't think the Broncos were a player or two away. They were literally a coach. I wholeheartedly believe that, because that roster had talent. Now the running back position was a mess all year. In fact, I bet if we played a fun game of this wouldn't really, Kevin couldn't participate because he unfortunately had to sit through most of those Denver Broncos games. I had the fortunate ability to ignore them, being that I was not in their home market. But if we played did they play running back for Denver in 2022 game, I think I don't know that I would get 60% right. If you threw a name out and said, did he play running back for the Denver Broncos? I'd probably get that wrong. Because that was a rotating door for running back last year. I didn't even realize. Like, I've gone back and looked at all the guys that they signed. I'm like, geez, they signed that guy? Oh, wow, that guy too.
That guy's still around?
Yeah.
Reminds me of the
really once what's his face went down with the knee injury, which that's embarrassing. I can't even think of his name.
Javonte Williams.
Thank you. Once he went down with the knee injury, that was just open season for putting somebody back there.
Alex, you're reminding me of the opening scene there of like Major League, where they're talking. I prepared a list of players for us to go out and get. This guy's dead. Well, then cross him off the list.
Cross him off the list. Yeah. That is two throwback movie references that I feel like we opened the show with. We should end the show with that one. That's a nice bookend right there.
All right. Bookend it. I like it. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
Stay tuned. We got draft previews coming up. We got player profiles coming up here. So a lot of good stuff. And then before you know it, we're going to be doing team breakdowns, right? So we got a lot of good things coming around the pike. We know that it's a little bit of a slower news cycle here at the moment, but before you know it, things are going to be picking up because free agency is right around the corner, draft, everything else, and it's going to just propel us right into the offseason.
Alex, any final thoughts?
That's about it. It's the dog days of winter into spring, as far as NFL is concerned, and we'll get through it.
Although starting starting next week, we are starting our draft prospect breakdowns there. So make sure you're tuning in on that. We'll be going through all the various position groups, all of that, getting you ready for the NFL draft. Make sure that you're giving us a follow over there on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF. And the best place to support this independent podcast, head over to the YouTube, click the subscribe button, ring that bell. That's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodle de lose.